Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to all of you who happen to be watching this podcast. This is the Transitional Champion podcast, and this is the NXT special because we're not doing the regular show today. It's actually been moved to tomorrow. I am your host, Dirt, and without my co-host here, Nathan Kennedy. Nathan actually got called in to do some overtime last night. I guess he got home at like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, something like that. So really sucks for his schedule. And it's just one of those things. It's like, hey, life happens sometimes. So as much as we try to say like, hey, this is our job, this is our thing, we're going out there, we're doing a podcast like this. Honestly, though, something like this, it's not paying the mortgage, it's not feeding the kids. So we're moving the show that would normally be on Wednesday to Thursday, but I didn't want you to be, empty-handed and angry about today. So instead of giving you nothing, I decided I would talk about the NXT TakeOver Phoenix. Now, Nathan had been telling me for the last couple of weeks that I need to watch it, and he really wanted me to watch it. So I said I would watch it last week and then talk about it on this week's show. But since he is unable to be here, I'm using this as just kind of a, special occasion thing. Talk about that NXT Phoenix takeover, and he's just going to miss out. But he can listen to it later, because he's cool like that. And then, but tomorrow you will get your regular Raw and SmackDown rewind. Looking forward to Elimination Chamber. And are we looking forward to Elimination Chamber? That's kind of a fair question sometimes. Okay, so one thing I need to do, though, is I need to open up the chat room. So if, guys, I mean, you guys, most of you should know what's going on by now, but we do have a chat room on YouTube, and my event for tomorrow disappeared. Well, that sucks. Okay. Well, anyway, no, it's still there. I'm just on live. Okay. I'm going to open up the chat room. So if you guys have any questions, comments, whatever, feel free to pop in there and post them. I'm going to keep this little window open here on the side of my screen. And so then that way I'll know if you guys want to say anything, want to throw anything out there. But I know this is going to throw a lot of people off because I created the podcast for tomorrow last week. So anybody who went and looked for it and set a reminder, it'll pop up tomorrow reminding them. And if they wonder, well, why isn't there anything going on today? Then they'll stumble across this show. But that's that. So people who aren't on YouTube all the time aren't going to be necessarily aware that there is something going on. But nonetheless, I will have that window open so I can see if anybody wants to talk. And I will be here to listen and make fun of you, maybe a little bit, probably. I mean, let's face it. I'm kind of a jerk like that. All right, so NXT TakeOver. One thing that Nathan and I have talked about. I mean, the main point of this whole getting into this podcast was I don't watch a lot of WWE product these days. Like, period. Raw, SmackDown, NXT, 205 Live. I just have not been watching a lot of it. Try to keep up on the the big pay-per-views every now and again, but the product has really lost me a lot over the last couple of years, as it has a lot of people. I know I'm not the only one. And so having not watched NXT for a long time, of course, it always gets rave reviews online. Everybody says it's so wonderful and great. And so Nathan's like, you really should check it out. So fine, I'm going to check it out. And that's not to say I don't watch any wrestling. I do from time to time watch Major League Fusion. I do watch ROH every now and again. I do watch Impact every once in a while. It's just one of those things. And I do work local indie shows sometimes and go to local indie shows. I do work as a manager. I've done booking. I've done training on promos and working the crowd. I've worked Gorilla. I've edited DVDs. I've made the flyers and graphics and banners. I've, you name it, I've probably done it at one time or another. And so it's not like I'm not around wrestling. It's still, in my life a lot of ways, but just not WWE product. So haven't watched NXT for a long time. Last time I watched NXT, long time ago. And it really felt to me like it was, as much as they try to push it as this other brand, it's like, they tried to push like Raw as a brand and SmackDown as a brand and then NXT as a brand, right? But it didn't feel like NXT, of course, gets the same amount of time and talent and devotion as Raw and SmackDown as far as production and touring and everything, right? Because it is. I don't know if it's still at the Full Sail University. I don't know if they still film it there or not, but it has a different look to it. It looks smaller, different crowds. The entryway is not as big and grand. It looks like a more pared down production. It looks more like Impact or ROH or Major League Wrestling. So, watching this show, everybody talks about how great the wrestling is, and I will agree. The wrestling in this was great, but there was something about the way the show was structured and presented. I won't say it bothered me, but it definitely felt underwhelming. And I don't just mean the fact that they're using I think they're using the SmackDown entry as their entryway. I'm not talking about stuff like that. What I mean is, it was a 2.5-hour show. It was only 5 matches. A couple of them were very long. It felt more like an indie show, honestly. There weren't a lot of backstage. In fact, I don't know if there were any backstage things going on. Interviews, stuff like that. They did, video packages to lead up to some of those, but it really felt, honestly, what it felt like was like an old ECW show in a way. Like, not because there were, chair shots and stiff kicks, although there were some pretty brutal things that happened on this particular show, but it just had that feel like it wasn't. It is more about the wrestling than the sports entertainment, but it still felt like the booking was a little. They didn't structure the show in a way that felt like you were opening. You weren't gradually building towards something, and at the same time, like they opened with this really fierce match, and then they had a pretty good match, and then they had a great match, and then they had an okay match, and then they had a great match. And it just like there wasn't a progression, and it didn't have that same feeling like there was something. I don't know. It was just weird. Maybe we'll figure it out as we talk through it. But again, the wrestling was really good. I mean, the 5 matches. Well, 3 of them were fantastic, and 2 were pretty good or okay. But it was good wrestling. And so I don't want to take away from the show. I know people are going to hear a lot of these comments and just be like, "Oh my gosh, this guy hated the show," or why is he, digging on NXT and whatever. It's like, I'm not trying to say it was horrible. I'm not trying to say it's the worst thing ever, or anything like that. But just not a 5 stars across the board, fantastic show, at least in my opinion. Now we did open with something that was kind of funky. We had a tag team match, and we had the War Raiders, who, again, I don't watch NXT, not real familiar with it, but you had these Roman Legion looking warriors. I know they were supposed to be Vikings, but they had the Roman staff. It's one of those things where it's like you mix your time periods with this stuff. But anyway, these like Viking dudes are like standing at the entrance, and the smoke comes, and they're like pounding on the shields, and the War Raiders come out, and they're doing their war, and they're getting everybody to chant and go crazy. And it was very amusing to me because I saw right in the middle of it here. Let me see if I can pull this up. Yes, share this. There we go. All right. Can you see this picture? This is the crowd. All right. These are people chanting war. And right above this dude, there was this lady. She just kind of she kind of gave this overall feeling there where she's like, all right, guys, like, I understand this is a thing, and I'm going to do the chant, but I'm not really feeling it. This is kind of dumb. And I mean, to be honest, it was dumb, but it was kind of dumb in like a great way. Like I it is a little over the top. It is a little silly, and it's weird in a show like this, again, that is so focused on the wrestling over the sports entertainment. I love characters, don't get me wrong, but it did feel like a little funky to have it, you know, right in the middle of the show there. So, all right. So anyway, I just wanted to share that because the moment I saw that, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I have to get a screen cap of that lady." That's hilarious. Okay, so the match itself, it was the War Raiders versus the Undisputed Era, and this is for the again the NXT tag team titles, and it was a good tag match. The Undisputed Era, I remember hearing its oh my gosh, I can't even remember their names. I'm pretty sure I wrote it down somewhere in here. I typed it out, but anyway, it doesn't matter. The Undisputed Era, I recognize them, you know, from somewhere else, probably ROH, whatever. And so it was nice to see them again in here, and they are good teams. In the tag team match, it was fun, it was frantic. You had a lot of power, although I will say, the War Raiders, not as dynamic a team, I think, as they probably could be. Again, I know they're supposed to be, you know, Viking, whatever. They're supposed to be Sheamus's original gimmick, I think. But there's just something about them, like they had the entrance and they really got into it. But then when you've got barbarians, whatever, and they're standing at the ring post just waiting for a hot tag. I don't know. It feels kind of weird. Like I feel the character needs to play up a little bit more, pacing back and forth, looking like they're ready to, you know, just jump in there, have that look like I'm going to tear you apart, and just waiting. And yeah, I mean, you know, you're playing a role going along with the show, so it is what it is. But it was fun. It was good stuff. A lot of just you know, running power slams, and they do a super kick, top rope knee drop thing, and you know, it was just really, it was strong, it was fun, it was powerful. It was a good way to open the show because when you got the four guys, there's a lot less low energy moments. You have the fast moving stuff, so it was good. I did like this match a lot. We got Matt Riddle versus Cassius Ono. Um, and it was good, but it wasn't great. And I think part of my problem was Ono. Ono is good. I don't even know how I want to put this because I don't want to insult. Like I don't want to insult the guy. He's not all around perfect. He's good technically, but again, I think he fails a little bit in the selling and working the character. And again, I know part of the NXT thing is they want to get these guys ready for the next level. So a lot of these are indie guys that have worked a lot of shows. They know one part really well, but maybe another part not so well. And Triple H is trying to get a lot of these guys who are really good with the technical side of the wrestling and maybe not so much the character stuff. Which, by the way, Velveteen Dream appeared in several parts in this, and he blah, 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 that guy is going to need a lot of work. He is like the personality of a doormat. It was very clear that he just really didn't know how to act when he's supposed to be an observer, when he's supposed to be, you know, sitting around watching the show. His mannerisms were just all over the place. That guy needs a you know, like a nice character actor, someone to sit down with him. Like I know WWE probably has been using a lot more of lately, but Ono, there's something about Ono where when he sells, it just doesn't look it doesn't look like he's selling the impact as much as like Riddle. Matt Riddle, I believe he was a UFC guy, right? I think they mentioned that at one point that he was a UFC guy and he came over to pro wrestling, and he's like the king of the bros or whatever, and everything's like bro, and he's like surfer dude and hanging out, and he's barefoot and, you know, ball cap on, whatever. And Ono is much more of the of that hard hitting indie guy who's coming in to prove himself. And I guess maybe that's part of the problem, is that Ono's gimmick is really not a gimmick, right? He's just this guy who fights and wants to be a good wrestler, which sure. But you need to find that one element of your personality to crank up, and just being a dick about new guys coming into the promotion, that's not it. You know what I mean? He's got to find that sliver of himself that he really wants to amp up. The match was about 10 minutes and it was fine, but it really felt more just kind of like your standard TV match. I know they did a lot of stuff with the ring posts and the steps and whatever. Um, tried to make it a little more, I don't want to say hardcore. That's not really the right term, but making, it more impactful. But it was just, it did feel like a TV match. There were no moments that really stood out like, I can't believe they did that here on this pay-per-view, because you wouldn't see that on TV. You know what I mean? And granted, it's a takeover special. It's not a pay-per-view. Nobody's paying $39.99 for it or whatever. But it's still that same idea that pay-per-view is supposed to be that boost up. But again, it was okay. It was good. It was good. It wasn't terrible. It was good, but it just, compared to watching that tag match, and then you come to this, it was a little bit of a dip down. And then we go to an up, but kind of in a difficult spot. We got Ricochet versus Johnny Gargano for the North American Championship. And this was long. I want to say this was like 25 minutes or something like that, which is, that is a good, solid match. But here's the thing. That needs to be a main event, right? And if you're going to put it in the middle of a show, then after it, you need an intermission. Now, if you're booking a live show, you put in an intermission, you have the people, they can buy their snacks from the concessions. They can get their gimmicks from the gimmick table. You can have the faces go out, sign autographs, shake hands, shake babies, whatever it is. And then they go back and you start up your second half of the show, whether it be your second hour or whatever. Whereas this one was just like, it was really long and really tough and really fierce. And then you go into a promo about the women's division and go into their match. And it really just felt like you needed something there to break it up other than your promo video for the women's championship. Like, that would be the moment, maybe to even, as this pay-per-view was 5 matches taking 2.5 hours or something ridiculous, like, that would be the time to throw in maybe more of your the other people on NXT or the history of NXT or something. I don't know, just something there to kind of pad the time a little bit and to just give more of a breather, because instead your breather then comes into the women's match, and the women's match had some issues with it anyway. But Ricochet, Johnny Gargano, there was a lot of crazy stuff going on. This was one of those, they pulled up the outside mat at one time, and they were doing some hard bumps on the outside that was pretty tough. They were doing a lot of high impact stuff. They were doing a lot of stuff where, you had that big finisher, looked like that would be the end, and then the guy kicks out of it and you can't believe it, and the match keeps going and progressing. So in that sense, it really needed to be a main event, whether it's your first hour main event break and you come back for your second hour, or your main event at the end of the show. And maybe that's part of the NXT, that this is just where they were at in storylines and stuff, and they just needed, something here. But these guys had a really good match. Just, it kind of hurt the flow of the show. In some ways, I'd almost say it should have maybe started the show and then put the tag match in the middle, and kind of change that dynamic where you have this big thing, and then you're kind of recovering from it and building up to the next big one at the end, but still, there was a lot of slingshot spears and slingshot suplexes and hitting guys. Oh, there was one spot where I think was it Ricochet was on the outside. No, Gargano. Ricochet caught Gargano and went to throw him out, and instead Gargano grabbed the ropes and was standing on the side, and so Ricochet slammed into him, and he dropped, and you could see his ribs just hit right on that corner of the ring, and that's like the metal bar. Like there's not, if there's padding there, there's very little. They may drape it over the side, pull it down a little bit, but even then, that's where it's being pulled tight. So you don't have a lot of padding, and when he hit right there, oh man, that was one of those things where you just like, you cringe on the inside because you know that legit hurts. Like there's no real way to lessen the impact of that with the way he hit on the ribs. I mean, normally you take a fall like that, you try to land a meaty part of your arm on your shoulder here, boom, and then kind of roll off, and he hit right on the ribs. And honestly, I thought because he had done that, they would have to change some stuff, slow it down a little bit, give him a couple minutes, maybe catch his breath, because sometimes that can even knock the air out of you. But he soldiered on. So credit to him. He fought through it and just kept going. Let's see. So again, a lot of false. You got stuff, reverse hurricanrana, slingshot DDT, draping DDT. They went into the draping DDT was onto the concrete floor, the exposed concrete, so that just looked terrible. Or no. They didn't do the draping DDT. They did something else. They did what did they do? Because they teased doing the DDT, but then changed it and went back in the ring. But they did a move. What did he do? He did something like on the top of his head onto that on the outside that just looked brutal. Now I can't remember. I wrote down way too much and now I can't find it in my notes. But again, this was a main event match in the middle of the show. And it was a fantastic match. As far as just looking at that match. And it was definitely, I would say you compare it to the main event. The main event was a really good match too. But I would say that this match was probably better than the main event. And I don't know if you can't really change them because of the difference in titles, right? Because you don't want to have your NXT championship defended earlier and then have, what was this, the North American championship, be at the end. So you can't switch them that way. But man, this just felt like that was the match of the night. And it came right in the middle and it was long. You had this, this kind of long tag match. You had this shorter singles match. You had this really long, brutal, powerful, mid-card title match. And then you had the women's championship and the main championship, and neither one of those were better than that middle match. Now, again, that may just be those guys stole the show, and they're just there's so much talent with those two guys, and maybe fighting each other is just chemistry magic that it just couldn't be helped. But you almost, if you were looking at the whole plan of the show, again, I would almost open with it because it was so big and awesome. To then flow through the other stuff to build back up for the main event, because it really felt like it stole so much of the energy out of everything right in the middle, and also with how long it was, because it was so long, but it was super great. So I would say, listen, here's my thing: if you are not a regular NXT viewer, like I'm not, but you want to see a really good match, pull up the Phoenix Takeover and just jump ahead to Ricochet Gargano, watch that, and then turn it off. Because that is the best match on the show. It's 20-some minutes. You're going to get a great match out of it, and then go about the rest of your day just remembering how great that match was, because it was fantastic. Next one, we had Shayna Baszler and Bianca Belair. And this was not a good match. I mean, it was okay. Again, it was okay. They had some unique spots in it. They did some stuff. What's her name? Was it Belair? Belair had like this super long ponytail, like coming out of the top of her head and coming down. And there were times when there was one move where Baszler Had her outside, and when she went to whip her around the ring post, but then grabbed that ponytail and yanked it back, and so slammed her back into the ring post. And so there was some fun stuff like that. Some where they thought about, they have this accessory, so use it right in the match, which was great. But the match itself was just not. Bianca Belair is the poor man's Sasha Banks. Or as we would say, Mantis Sasha Banks. She is, she's just not at the same level. Her kind of streetwise attitude, sassy chick thing is death. It is X-Pac heat. It is. I'm gonna take a drink here. You can tell I'm having some trouble talking now that I've been talking so long and not having a drink. She's just, the more you see her on your TV, the less you want to see her. And it's not because she's a great heel. It's not because a good heel you want to see lose. You want to see him compete, but you want to see him lose. Ric Flair is a heel. He was cocky. He was arrogant. You kind of hated him, but he was a great wrestler. You wanted to see him compete, but you wanted to see him get his comeuppance. Andre the Giant, Ted DiBiase, Macho Man is a heel. Great classic heels. Even when what's his name from Shield? Not Dean Ambrose. The guy who wore the Tron suit. Now I can't think of his name. It's not Roman Reigns. It's not Dean Ambrose. I want to say Shane Rattery. That's a friend of mine from high school. It's not Shane Rattery. Tyler Black. Why the hell? I can't think of his WWE name. I want to call him Tyler Black, and that's not. What the heck? Anyway, whatever. I can't think of his name. I'm gonna have to Google it because this is driving me. Tyler Black is who? Seth Rollins. I couldn't think of Seth Rollins' name. Tyler Black, Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins. When Seth Rollins turned heel, it's like you liked him. He was good. He was a great wrestler. He was a good heel. You wanted to see him lose, but you wanted to see him wrestle, right? Good heel. Charlotte Flair, good heel. You want to see her wrestle. She's a great wrestler, but she's cocky. She has the attitude. She's entitled to everything because of her dad. You want to see her lose, but you want to see her wrestle because she's so good. Asuka is another one. When she turns heel, you still want to see her wrestle, but you want to see her lose as heel. Bianca Belair, I just want off my TV. I want to see her lose so the match will be over so she's not around anymore. And I don't mean that, on her personally. She may be a great person. She may love her mama. She may be like the best girlfriend of all time. She might be, I don't know if she has kids. She might be a great mom. I don't know. She may be just a wonderful, lovely, delightful person. In real life, her character is death. I don't want to see her on TV. And as far as the wrestling is okay. I wouldn't say that she's a great talent. Potential, sure, maybe. But putting her in a match, and especially, if she's a developing talent, I understand. You got to give them chances, and you got to put them with better people and give them that opportunity to build and grow, and that's fine. And that happens in pay-per-view payoff matches all the time. And so I don't necessarily have a problem with that. But as someone who doesn't watch NXT regularly, and I'm just tuning in to watch some good matches, again, this match kind of fell flat to me. It kind of came down a little bit, just because she's not the same level of talent. And Shayna Baszler, she's good. I don't know that I would say great. And part of that is just this match. I would definitely say I'd like to see her against some other talent and see if she does remarkably better. with a match. But again, there were some good things in here, but not. It just wasn't great. Now, Shayna Baszler, and the weird thing too is it looked like they were both heels, and I don't know if that's I don't know if that's correct or not, but it felt like it was a heel match, which is kind of a tough thing to pull off, really, because Baszler had these two other women that were out there that were wearing like gray tan jumpsuits or something. I don't remember exactly, but they jumped in at one point and tried to get involved in the match, and it's like, but this other girl is, you definitely want to hate her because of the way she's acting and her attitude and everything. She's just so unlikable. But then, a babyface doesn't have friends run in and attack. So I'm guessing it's got to be a heel dynamic in this match. And again, it may just be that's the point where they're at in their booking, and they just had to put this match together because maybe someone else got injured or someone got called up or, whatever. It does happen sometimes. It's just kind of weird. And if you're going to do a match like that, I wouldn't put it on a show like this. You do that on a weekly show, and you have, some third person somehow get involved in some way that they can then turn against, and then you've got, a baby face for your payoff match of the pay-per-view. So this match didn't really work for me. It was okay, but it just wasn't the same level as the rest of the show. And my hands are really dry. You guys see me like rubbing them together a lot and stuff. They're just so dry right now. It's like 19 degrees outside, and which is weird because like last weekend it was like 50, 60 degrees, and now we're back into below freezing. It really sucks. So anyway, so the guys watching the video, that's what's up with that. So our main event, Tommaso Ciampa versus Aleister Black. Aleister Black, he is money. He is like, on the one hand, you should call him up to the main roster because he's great. But on the other hand, you don't want to call him up to the main roster because you're taking a large talent, out of NXT. He also, he kind of looks like the old man from Dragon Ball Z. He's got this real big bushy beard. I don't know. It's just kind of weird. But anyway, this was the NXT Championship match, and this was good. This was good plus. If the other match with Ricochet and Gargano, if that was great, then this was really good plus. So it was an excellent match, but not quite to the level of the one that came earlier in the night. But it was still really good. It was really entertaining, and it was another long one. It was probably about the same length as what we got for the North American Championship in the middle of the show. So it was another really long match, and you got some run-ins. You had Velveteen Dream, of course, jumped in because he's there. You bring in a talent, you set him at ringside, and then in the main event, who knew? They just get involved. They jump in the ring and stuff happens. So. But the match itself, again, it was really, it was a lot like the other match that we got with Ricochet and Gargano. In the same way, there was a lot of really just these are two big guys, right? So this isn't like, Jeff Hardy versus Braun Strowman. Where you or Rey Mysterio versus Big Show, right? It's not that you have some big guy and then you have some fast guy and this clashing of styles. You had two big guys in this powerful match going at it, and both of those matches were the same way. Two big guys just powering into each other, and a lot like that one. There was a lot of big stuff outside, crashing into steps, whatever. There was a lot of they hit the big move that would normally be a finisher, but it's not a finisher because this is, the big main event match that they're hyped up for. And so again, you can't fight the comparison between the two matches. When you watch the show overall, there's definitely a line that you can draw between the two. That's just naturally going to happen because of the nature of those matches. And again, like, I hate to take away from it and say like it was bad, because it wasn't bad. In no way was it a bad match, but it just didn't quite compare to the other one we had for the night. And it felt like you were getting another match that was pretty much the same. It felt like they didn't there wasn't an idea between the agents putting together the matches that they needed to draw a distinction between the two. It was more like, go out there, do your thing, two big guys go at it. And then they go to the other one, go out there, do your thing, your two big guys go at it. It didn't feel like they really needed to throw a lot. They were almost like two sides of the same coin, right? So from that booking perspective, I would say it kind of fails for not being as good as the match earlier in the night, and feeling like it was kind of the same. But again, it was a really good match. It was not a terrible match by any stretch of the imagination. If you had seen none of the rest of the show and then just watch that main event, you would go, wow, that was a great main event. So the matches themselves, and all the way through the show, this is what I was trying to kind of get at the beginning before we started going through the matches, was that the matches on the show were good. They were all at least good. None of them fell flat. None were duds. None were 1 star or -5 stars or anything like that. And then several of them were better than good. But the overall structure of putting these 5 matches together to say, here is your show, I felt was lacking. And again, maybe that could be because it's developmental. Maybe there's some other stuff going on backstage where they were trying some things. Again, having not watched NXT weekly leading up to it, and just watching this special in its own bubble, maybe there was some sort of something different that was going on that led up to this, which made these characters feel different. But for me, this was the same. If I go to some random indie show, right? If I hear there's some indie show that's like 45 minutes away, and I decide to make the drive, and so I drive, down to Litchfield, Illinois, or drive up to Peoria, or I drive over to Bloomington or whatever, and I just watch a match, and it's a bunch of random guys, maybe 1 or 2 guys I've worked with at some other show, whatever. And I'm like, hey, I'm just here to watch this. I have no idea how these guys have been booked in the past. I don't know until they walk out who's face, who's heel. You just kind of let the show flow and see what comes together. And everything is kind of divorced from everything else. You're just there pretty much to watch matches, because you don't know where people stand really until you see the match unfold. And with that being this show, I would say that the show was pretty good. If this was a pay-per-view that you would pay for, like, the way it used to be with WWE pay-per-views that you were paying, $39.95, $49.95. If you were asked to pay that for this show, I would say no. I wouldn't pay that overall. Being on the network, being that it's 2.5 hours, you may be thinking, maybe you've already watched Raw and SmackDown for the week, or maybe you fast forward through them on your DVR and you're wondering, should I go in and watch these? Yeah, watch that middle match. Watch the main event, watch the tag match. I would kind of skip the other 2, quite honestly. But if you're thinking, if I've already watched 5 hours of WWE, should I take the time to watch the whole 2.5 hour special? I would say no, honestly. I would pick out that, again, pick the matches out from it instead of watching the whole thing. If you're not a regular NXT viewer like me, my recommendation is, if you're sitting there someday, you want to watch some wrestling, you don't normally watch NXT, you just want to, again, that middle match, the last match, maybe go back and watch the tag if you want to. But it wasn't a show that made me say, oh my gosh, I have to watch NXT every week now. It was a show that made me go, maybe I will watch a little more closely to the card as it's announced or revealed after the show, and go back to watch one or two matches here or there, because that's kind of what I'm doing with Major League Wrestling and what I'm doing with ROH, and what I do with Impact. I don't watch all the shows all the way through, although Major League Wrestling, sometimes there's only one match or two matches, but I don't always sit and watch everything from the show. I just got too much stuff going on, and I'm old, and I've got kids, I've got a family, I've got a house to take care of. I have all this garbage I got to clean up that always piles up behind me for several days until I get to it. It's just one of those things where I wouldn't, unless you're, several years ago, I was so diehard in. I watched everything from WCW, everything from ECW, everything from ROH, everything from WWE. Well, I guess ROH wasn't a thing yet. But New Japan, if I could get my hands on it. WCW used to do this thing where they would show matches online. Does anybody remember this? They had this 3D model of a wrestling ring that was like in this futuristic Mad Max cage, and there were like flames and spikes and stuff at ringside, and the guys, I think they were just guys training at the power plant, but they would wrestle, and there'd be like a blue screen or green screen, whatever, and they would just wrestle, and it would look like they were in this. I don't know if anybody remembers that or not. That was a thing WCW did for a while. I would watch that. I watched, the Saturday night shows and the Sunday night shows, and all of the WCW Worldwide and all of that stuff. There's a time, and if you're one of those people that watches all that stuff, great. But if you're someone who's like me and your time is a little more precious, and you've got some more stuff that you have to try to fit into your schedule, that middle match, I just love that match. The Ricochet and Gargano, and those are names that maybe they're not too familiar to you if you're just a Raw and SmackDown guy, but if you have watched any indie wrestling or smaller promotions, they are guys who have popped up from time to time, so they are names that should be somewhat familiar if you watch that stuff. And again, Aleister Black and Tommaso, I want to say Ciampa, but I'm not sure is that right? Is that how you spell it? Like Chow, right? Ciampa. That one was pretty good too. And the tag match was a lot of fun. Yeah. So I'm now just repeating myself and saying the same stuff over. So anyway, if you have any other questions, comments, whatever, drop them down underneath. Again, tomorrow we'll do the regular show. This was just me talking, filling time, giving you something, because we don't have a regular show to do because Nathan had to work that overtime. But I hope to see you tomorrow. And I hope you enjoyed it. And you're probably tired of listening to me say like the same 3 or 4 things over and over and over again. So, but if you do have any questions, comments, whatever, be sure to drop them below. And if you want to just tell me I'm an idiot and NXT is the best shows of anything that WWE does, and you only watch NXT and you only watch 205 Live and you don't watch anything else, great, whatever. I do know a guy who's so into wrestling, he watches everything, including the Total Divas and Total Bellas and whatever. That I could never be that level of fan. I watched one episode of Total Divas, and it was about the Bellas, and the one was dating John Cena, and the other one was married to Daniel Bryan. And I got done watching that show, and I was like, I hate both of these girls as people. And so I just could not, like, as human beings, I have less respect for these girls. So I don't watch those shows. That's not my generation. I guess I'm just too old. I'm the wrong demographic. I'm a toxic male, so take that into consideration. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.